This is a morning of true and historic victory. While the enemy occupiers desperately tried to hold the front line, the armed forces of Ukraine delivered a massive, crushing blow in the south, and officially, 9 settlements are once again under Ukraine's full control. The blue and yellow flag returns to places where the enemy had promised to stay forever. How did our defenders manage to break through the layered defense? What exactly is happening right now in the liberated territories, and why are the occupiers abandoning their equipment in panic and fleeing? Today we will break down all the details of this lightning-fast offensive. Operational reports from the front lines and the first footage from deoccupied villages. This is the video we've all been waiting for. Watch until the end. And for more details, check out our report. You are on the Glavred channel. I'm your host, Yevhen Serov. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let's get to the facts confirmed by the operational command. The offensive in the southern direction was the result of a carefully planned operation. In a very short period of time, our defense forces successfully drove the enemy out of 9 strategically important settlements. These are not just names on a map, they are vital logistical hubs and elevations that allow our forces to move forward. The occupiers spent months building fortifications here, burying themselves in concrete and mining every meter. But Ukrainian artillery and assault groups worked together like a single mechanism. The article notes that the advance took place simultaneously in several sectors, which disoriented the enemy's headquarters. The enemy didn't know where to send their reserves, and as a result, they collapsed. It's interesting to watch as the world's second-largest army retreats. According to reports from the scene, the liberation happened so quickly that the Russians left behind real gifts: abandoned armored vehicles, ammunition depots, and communication equipment. All of these factors will now work against them. But the most important factor is the enemy's morale. After losing these 9 settlements, talk of a possible encirclement began to spread among the occupiers. The Russian command is now trying to present this as a planned and strategic regrouping of their forces. But the personal belongings and documents left behind at the positions tell a different story. This was a flight. Our military has reported that the intensity of enemy shelling in these specific areas has significantly diminished, as the enemy's artillery was forced to urgently pull back much deeper to avoid becoming an easy target. Why is the liberation of these particular territories absolutely critical? First, we are steadily expanding the bridgehead for applying much greater pressure on the enemy's southern grouping. Second, the liberation of these settlements opens the way to key routes along which the occupiers supply weapons from the south. The article emphasizes the operation is ongoing. Currently, clearing units are operating in the liberated territories. It is important for us not just to raise the flag, but to gain a foothold and make these areas safe for our soldiers. Local residents who spent months under occupation are finally meeting their liberators, and these images are now spreading across the entire internet. They are the best proof of what we are fighting for. Do you believe in our continued success in southern Ukraine? Write your thoughts in the comments. Let our brave defenders feel your unwavering support, even through the digital screens.
The Ukrainian army is seizing the initiative and trying to force the Russians to play by its rules. This was stated by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky. He noted that in February, the defense forces regained control over a larger area of Ukrainian land than the Russian troops managed to capture during the same period. This is the first time since the Kursk offensive operation in 2024. Syrsky emphasized that the enemy outnumbers them by almost 3 times. But due to the active actions of the Ukrainian armed forces, Russian commanders are forced to postpone the dates of their operations and patch up holes in their own defenses.
We continue the counter-offensive operation in the Oleksandrivka direction. Here, the airborne assault group regained control over 285 square kilometers in a month. Overall, since the beginning of the operation, control has been regained over more than 400 square kilometers of territory. At the same time, in many other directions, our soldiers are holding back the enemy through active defense and sometimes advancing forward. Oleksandr Syrsky, Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces.
Analysts say that the defense forces are also disrupting the plans of Russian commanders in the Pokrovsk direction. For the second year in a row, the enemy has been trying to capture Pokrovsk and Mirnorod in order to subsequently transfer forces to Kostiantynivka, Drushkivka, as well as Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. And at the same time, they are trying to maintain the pace of their assaults in the south of Zaporizhzhia region.
Every single one of those deadlines was completely crossed out by our brave and dedicated defenders, and as a direct result of this, they are now carrying out all of these tasks in parallel. At the same time, they are completely lacking in strength, the reserves are not as they would like, and they are redeploying, including from
Since the beginning of the day, the Russian army has tried 47 times to break through the Ukrainian defenses at 8 bridgeheads. According to the Ukrainian General Staff, on the Huliaipol section of the front, the invaders attacked 13 times. Another 12 Russian assaults were repelled by the defense forces in the Pokrovsky direction, and on the Kostiantynivka bridgehead, Ukrainian defenders stopped a dozen enemy attacks.
Currently, there are about 717,000 personnel. These include various security agencies, the Army, the National Guard, the FSB, in other words, people in uniform who are present on the territory of Ukraine. They intend to increase their contingent to 800,000 by the end of the year. Therefore, their main resource is manpower. In addition, of course, there is the active use of drones, air support, and guided aerial bombs. The enemy forces are deploying up to 300 aerial bombs on a daily basis against various defensive positions held by the Ukrainian army. This includes frontline areas, border territories, and the front line itself. And
in occupied Crimea, Ukrainian Special Operations Forces struck 4 Russian radar stations. They clarified that they successfully managed to completely destroy the Oborona 14 radar, the Nebo-U, and 2 stations in the radio Kupol complex in occupied Yevpatoria. In total, over the past day, Ukrainian defenders hit 3 tanks and 10 armored combat vehicles positioned at various different sections along the front line. 70 artillery systems and 2 Russian multiple launch rocket systems were also destroyed. The invading occupying forces will also be facing a shortage of another 2,000 individual drones and nearly 200 military vehicles. Also, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, 750 Russian soldiers were eliminated, and Russia's total combat losses since the start of the full-scale invasion have already exceeded 1,274,000 personnel.
We will discuss in more detail what is happening at the front with a military analyst. Denys Popovych is already with us live. Denys, I welcome you.
good afternoon.
I just gave a brief overview of the situation, about where and in which directions the current situation is most tense right now. But let's examine these developments in more detail. In your opinion, where is the hottest spot on the front right now?
Right now, it's definitely Donetsk region for us. As it was, so it remains. And of course, it's also the south of Ukraine. That is, it's the Zaporizhzhia region, south of Zaporizhzhia, and at the junction of the Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions. Also, the Huliaipol directions. Well, this entire Zaporizhzhia arc is currently a tense section of the front.
Regarding the occupiers' plans, we see that the military understands them. What is the dynamic of events in the Kremlin's plans? Capturing the Donetsk region, pushing for Odessa or Zaporizhzhia? What is clear and what are our successes? Where is the enemy being stopped?
As for the Odessa region, it's harmless for them to dream about it. You understand? Of course, they have plans for the Odessa region. They are very far from realizing them. As of today, it's as far away as the moon. But for them, it's reaching the administrative borders of the Donetsk region. That is the complete capture of the Donetsk region. And it's an attempt to clear the Orikhiv defensive area of Ukrainian troops and move closer to Zaporizhzhia in order to bring it under direct fire from tube artillery and drones and create the conditions for its assault and a simultaneous offensive on Zaporizhzhia. In
the Tumska region, we see that another act of war crime has occurred. People were taken to the territory of the Russian Federation, an entire village. These are people who remained in the frontline areas, in their homes, right on the front line. Why do you believe this action was taken? What is the strategic military and political goal behind this move?
It's mostly about terror. It's kidnapping, it's an attempt to remove people and so on. In other words, this is what they have been doing and continue to do. In general, the border zone is a large gray area. And these systematic attempts to remove people, both the illegal abductions and the forced removals, these efforts have unfortunately often been successful. They have continued throughout almost the entire period of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It's just that we don't always pay attention to it. One of these cases happened to come into our view, into our focus of attention. But this has been happening all the time, in 1923, in 1924, and in 1925 as well, simply because it's a gray zone and enemy saboteurs are very active there.
In southern Ukraine, the defense forces regained control over 400 to 435 square kilometers. Volodymyr Zelensky stated this during a briefing with Netherlands Prime Minister Job Jetten. According to Ukraine's president, over the past month and a half, the armed forces conducted key defensive actions and, in some areas, offensive operations. Regarding the offensive, Volodymyr Zelensky also reminded that the Russian army is preparing a new offensive in the spring. Let's listen.
The absolutely fundamental and primary core element we protect the state.
We understand and often say on our broadcasts that Putin has no intention of stopping. But with what means and by whom will Putin actually try to advance? Who is fighting on his behalf right now?
Well, it's absolutely obvious that his primary and most significant resource is manpower. Currently, there are an estimated total of approximately 717,000 personnel from a wide range of different security agencies, including the Army, the National Guard, and the FSB, that is to say, people in uniform who are present on the territory of Ukraine. They intend to increase their contingent to 800,000 personnel by the end of the year. Well, that's their intention, but how it will actually be implemented is another question. Therefore, their main resource is manpower. In addition to this, of course, there is also the active use of sophisticated surveillance drones, tactical air support, and guided aerial bombs. They are currently using up to 300 of these aerial bombs on a daily basis against various strategic positions of the Ukrainian army. These strikes target both frontline territories, border areas, and the front line itself. So these are the resources they have, and they will continue to actively use them. And
are there any signs that Putin is planning to carry out a mobilization in the Russian Federation? After all, it's a delicate topic, and people don't really like to bring it up. Everyone just wants to celebrate their successes. The so-called liberator boys in the special military operation. We can see the consequences in IT. They're all coming back, and now 1 million, almost 1.5 million people are either dead or wounded. And that's all. The Russian Federation. In your opinion, will Putin carry out a mobilization? Or will he use other tools, such as mercenaries or foreigners, whom we also see being captured?
As of March 9th, 2026, there is no sign that he is planning a mobilization. Why? Because there are plans to recruit contract soldiers. For this year, that's about 409,000 people. Last year, it was 406,000 people. Last year, he did not announce a mobilization. So we can see that the numbers do not allow us to say that Russia is planning or preparing to carry out a mobilization similar to the one that took place in 2002, because in that case, there would be a very active, significant increase, plus 300,000 people, plus 400,000, plus 500,000, and so on. Mobilization implies a large number of people who will be called up to join the armed forces. At the moment, such a situation is not being observed. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's completely impossible. But why is this the case? Because as of today, everything is legally and technically ready within the Russian Federation to carry out a partial mobilization. That is to say, the shortcomings that led to the massive outflow of people abroad in the fall of 2022 have been fully eliminated. We see this, and we are monitoring it. Furthermore, as of today, formal mobilization is still technically ongoing, because it was announced on September 21st, 2022, and ended only with an oral order from Putin. But no corresponding regulatory document was issued in the Russian Federation. Therefore, formally, it is still ongoing. And to restart this process again is quite simple. All it takes is a statement from Putin.
And what about those who are fighting? In Ukraine, on the front line, the Russian command has deployed an elite airborne marine unit to the southern section of the front. This was reported by the Institute for the Study of War. According to analysts, some units of the Russian Federation's army were withdrawn from the eastern regions of Ukraine and redeployed to the south. This happened after the Ukrainian army intensified its actions in the Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk directions. The organization notes that this tactic has already been used before. Previously, could you please tell us about these elite troops? How effective are they? How dangerous could they be for the armed forces of Ukraine?
or the Russian army will never again be what it was in 2022. In terms of training and combat readiness, the contract army of 2022 was the best. After that, its quality was diluted due to the influx of mobilized soldiers and contract servicemen, and so on and so forth. The same goes for mercenaries. As of today, the composition of the armed forces of the Russian Federation is heterogeneous. There are units that are better trained, and there are units that are less well trained. Now, more and more, they are recruiting those who are extremely poorly trained and inexperienced, and their period of combat training is exceptionally brief and inadequate. Moreover, in civilian life, this was not exactly considered the most ideal contingent. Many of them signed these contracts in general without really understanding the dangerous situation they're getting into. Choosing the best among those they currently have, they try to use them in those sectors of the front that they consider a priority. Why is the South a priority for them right now in this regard? Because that's where we are counterattacking. And in order to stop our advance, they need to use as many troops as possible. And these troops need to be of much better quality than the vast majority of the reinforcements that are currently arriving in the Russian army.
Yes, this main bulk is clearly visible among the prisoners you can see in videos from Ukrainian captivity. Thank you very much. Denys Popovych, military observer, was live on the FKR channel.